Okay, here we go. Running up and good to go. All right, here we go. Salute to NBA Nation on this Wednesday evening. Another edition of NBA Weekly. CP the Franchise here. Special guest. You can catch him on NBA Weekends on SiriusXM NBA Radio with former NBA Coach of the Year, Sam Mitchell. He is our guy, Brian Gelseiler, returning to the show. On today's show, the NBA Cup is over and the Milwaukee Bucks reign supreme. We're going to recap this game, talk about Giannis' brilliance as well, plus a reunion in Minnesota going down on Thursday. The Knicks and the Timberwolves will meet. Karl-Anthony Towns, Julius Randle. We're going to talk about these two teams, where they are right now, and where this trade is for both teams, how this trade is looking for both teams at the moment. Plus, speaking of trades, Jokic and the Nuggets are looking for help. New reports are stating that the Nuggets are interested in Zach Lavine. We're hearing Brandon Ingram. So we're going to talk Nuggets. We're going to talk NBA trade rumors as well. So lock in, hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. Another edition of the NBA Report. All right, Brian, happy Wednesday, man. Welcome back.
It's my pleasure, CP. Thrilled to be with you, buddy.
Absolutely, man. All right, the NBA Cup final last night. Yeah, the Bucks over the Thunder. West leading Thunder 97-81, man. A brilliant performance by the Bucks Big Two, led by the Greek Freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo, man. Monster game for him, 26, 10, 19 rebounds. He had multiple blocks, multiple steals, 3 blocks, 2 steals. What was your key takeaways from this game, man?
How poorly the Thunder shot the basketball. And I don't want to take anything away from Giannis, but let's face it, it's not exactly earth-shattering news that Giannis came out on the floor against anybody and was the best player on the floor.
Yeah.
So we're and as great as Giannis played, and I'm not pouring cold water on it, how poorly the Thunder shot the basketball really was the big difference in the game. And listen, credit Austin Jackson. I thought he did a very good job in his minutes on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. To me, Milwaukee, and I will say this, I thought that the NBA Cup final was more of a product of OKC shooting it poorly than of Milwaukee guarding well. With all that said, when you look at the Bucks, who were 2-9 and have gotten to where they've gotten now, their defense is significantly better than what it was. And yes, having Middleton back out on the floor helps, even though he hasn't played great offensively, but having him back on the floor helps. But I think we're seeing a few things in play here. Number one, Doc Rivers getting back to coaching the way we've seen Doc coach in the regular season before. And we all kind of forgot, CP, what a really good coach Doc Rivers is in the regular season.
Yeah.
And he's got everybody buying in, everybody pulling in the right direction. They're back to playing a lot more drop coverage, which makes Lopez much more of a threat defensively. And when you get a team like OKC last night that can't throw it in the ocean, the drop coverage looks great. And so they were able to pull that off. I also think for the Bucks, they got healthy here, and getting healthy is important. I think a year into the Lillard-Giannis combination and the comfort level that they've had with each other, it's interesting. Damian Lillard has had to adjust, I think, more than anybody's wanted to really give him credit for having to adjust. Everybody forgets, LaMarcus Aldridge was sent out of Portland so Lillard could be the alpha. Because Aldridge wouldn't give him alpha status. He gets traded to Milwaukee, and Damian Lillard is not the alpha in Milwaukee. He's never going to be, as long as Giannis wears a Bucks uniform. So I think there's been that adjustment, and I think he's adjusted pretty well. Give the Bucks a lot of credit. And again, Bucks stay healthy. They're certainly, I don't know how far they advance in the Eastern Conference. They're going to be a tough out, and they're likely to be a factor.
Yeah, I mean, 2-8 to start the season. They've now won 13 out of their last 16. I mean, like you said, you got to give Doc credit, because for so many years we're waiting for the shoe to drop. We want to criticize the guy for lack of playoff success and kind of waiting for him for his demise with this team after he took the interim job from Adrian Griffin. But he has these guys playing well. The rotation is set. And, the thing is with this Bucks team is that their floor is always going to be high with Giannis and Dame leading the way because of their ability to just take over games. It's the rest that needs to come into form to determine ultimately where they're going to finish. But Doc certainly has this rotation set right now. They're playing better defensively. And again, like you mentioned with Giannis, man, he called this team out very early during the season. He said, hey, whoever wants to be here, be here. Whoever wants to go, go. but he was not settling for anything less than excellence with this team, and he's leading the way, man. Dominant last night.
Yeah, yes, he is. And a few other points that are important to make about the Bucks. In a lot of NBA circles, part of this Bucks streak, people were detracting because generally the competition wasn't that tough. The schedule was pretty soft, and the Bucks took advantage of that. I say this, CP, you can only beat who they put in front of you, right?
Right.
I mean, so they played the schedule and they played it well. You can't call the NBA Cup win a schedule win. You played against one of the two toughest teams in the NBA, certainly the toughest team in the Western Conference, and they beat them, and they beat them good. So you certainly can't turn around and say, "Hey, that's that's a schedule thing." That's not. They earned it. They deserved it. They played great against the Thunder. Here's the other thing about Doc that's really important. Doc doesn't have two-way wings on this team. He's got a lot of one-way wings. Yeah. He's finding value in guys that give him one really good skill. I mentioned Austin Jackson earlier, who's played very well defensively. AJ Green's a really good shooter. He scraps. Okay. And you know what? That skill's helpful to Doc. He can find that. Look, Gary Trent's been a little bit of a disappointment for them so far. Yeah. Pat Connaughton's not the athlete he once was on an NBA level. So he struggles a little bit. And listen, now they got to look at what can they do to make this team better. They have one first-round pick they could possibly use, and that'll be in 2031. Mm-hmm. Bobby Portis is an expiring contract and a potentially intriguing piece to other teams. Now, you can ask the Bucks the question, do you want to trade Portis? Maybe you don't. The other thing that's interesting is Brook Lopez's $23 million expiring contract. And, as much as you built the drop defense around Lopez, are you better off with Giannis and Portis as being those two guys and adding to your perimeter rotation and bringing in another wing for Lopez? What the Bucks do here at this deadline is going to be very, very important. They do need help on the wing. And with having Portis as the quote unquote, the extra guy, I wouldn't say he's a dispensable piece, but he's a piece that's got value out there. There's contract flexibility with it being an expiring deal. You have a first to throw in. Maybe you're able to do something. The biggest limiting part of trading for Portis is because of the Bucks' current luxury tax situation and being in the second apron, they cannot take on an extra dime of salary in a Portis trade, and he's only making $12 million, which is why maybe the Lopez $23 million is able to net you a better player, maybe a Malcolm Brogdon type who they had years ago, who is an expiring deal with the Wizards. Maybe that's a guy you look at. But there's guys out there that are certainly going to be available to them that can help them on the perimeter. Be very interesting to see what the Bucks do or if they stand pat.
Yeah, that is interesting. But then, I look at this front court last night, and it's so interesting because you have teams like the Celtics, they're going 5 out, and the Thunder, and now the Knicks are doing it, and you have the Pacers and so on and so forth. And then I look at this Bucks team with this front court, and I see how Giannis and Brook Lopez in their two-man game, they're able to take advantage of the Thunder's lack of size. They're running all over Caruso there. Poor Caruso, listen, he's a great defender, but he was overmatched last night, clearly. And then I'm like, oh, man, size matters sometimes, man. Like, they just look good with that front court, man.
It does. And listen, give the Bucks credit because they bludgeon the Thunder. And by the way, the Thunder have, your old Knick guy, Isaiah Hartenstein, who actually didn't play badly last night. The Bucks were just too much for him. They took advantage of the fact that Chet Holmgren wasn't there.
Right.
And I know, listen, Chet Holmgren's 210 pounds soaking wet, but the guy plays with a furor and an anger and a spirit that I think's real special. And so that's something the Bucks were able to take advantage of. But you do bring up an interesting point. When you look at who they're competing with in the Eastern Conference, and you mentioned the Celtics playing 5 out, and you mentioned the Knicks playing 5 out, you got to look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, who've had a wonderful start here, who are upgraded and better. And they don't play a heavy wing-laden team. They're playing almost similar to the Bucks from a personnel standpoint and going out there with 2 7-footers. The Bucks do it with Giannis and Lopez. Here you have the Cavs doing it with Mobley and Jarrett Allen. So you wonder, how are the Bucks better off matching up? Do you get smaller and shore up the perimeter, or do you keep just kind of band-aiding these one-way guys together? Here's what I will tell you. What you see the Bucks do and where you see them borrow from if they go make a deal will tell you everything they think about Chris Middleton. Because if they are confident and comfortable in Middleton's health status, they may not look to shore up the wing with the thought they can count on Chris Middleton. If they're going to look to shore up the wing and borrow from their riches up front with the big guys, if they're going to look to do something like that, it tells you that they don't have a lot of confidence that they're going to see Middleton healthy into April and May.
Yeah, no question about it. And what I did find interesting was that, by the half, this was a very close game. This was a one-possession game, damn near by the half. With OKC shooting so poorly from three. They go 5 for 32 from three. You have both SGA 8 of 24 from the field, Jalen Williams 8 of 20 from the field. Yeah, and still, they're still in it in the first half. Now, second half was a different story. Was there any adjustments that you wanted to see from OKC to keep them in this game last night?
Not really, because they played the way they play. They played their style of play. They generate open threes. That's who they are. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head what Dort shot last night.
Yeah.
All right. But Dort's been shooting over 40% from three this year.
0 for 4.
Like there you go. They shoot threes. All right. That's what they do. The threes didn't fall last night. Now, listen, I say they shoot threes. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is probably right now the best mid-range player in the league. He plays a ton in that area of the floor, so they're not limited to just that. But I will say this about OKC. I do think that there's an understanding, that you have to get Holmgren back, because what I did see last night, which was interesting, is against a team playing really good defense, they struggled with easy baskets.
Right.
In this day and age in the NBA, CP, everyone's talking about shooting a three. We need good 3-point shooters. The lifeblood of playoff offense is getting easy baskets. Even looking at how the Celtics got through last year, Jaylen Brown going to the basket was their single biggest offensive weapon. As much as they love shooting the three, you had to respect Brown's ability, and Tatum for that matter, to put the ball on the floor and go to the basket. You have to. So when you look at the Thunder and say, where are they weak? Where are they getting easy buckets from? Out in transition maybe a little bit. Listen, they have number 1 rated defense in the NBA. They play to that strong defense, and they will continue to. They're a much better team than last year. Caruso and Hartenstein added to this group really helps them a lot. But offensively, it's kind of outside Shai Gilgeous-Alexander who's creating shots for you. And that's going to be interesting to watch, because Sam Presti at the trade deadline, you have to look at this team if you're him and say, we're ready to win right now.
Yeah.
This young group has that kind of look about them. Now, whether they're mature enough, whether they can go through the battles and be physical enough, and the war of attrition, that's the playoffs. So that's a different matter altogether. But you do wonder when you hear names of guys out there that are legit shot makers, from Butler to Vucevic to Zach Lavine, even look at the name of Larry Markkinen, who, 24 hours before the trade deadline will be eligible to be traded, which is really interesting. All right. Yeah. So you look at all of those types of names that are out there right now, and you think to yourself, well, if you're OKC, you can have anybody you want. You can go do what you got to do to get anybody. And I wonder if this is not the year that Sam Presti says, you know what, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to pay all these first-round picks. Let me put a handful of these in a deal and bring in some reinforcements for this team that could help us advance, go to the finals, and potentially win a championship.
Yeah, because typically, right now you have to factor maybe SGA's their guy in terms of getting those easy baskets at the rim. But the Bucks did a good job on him between Jackson with his ball denial, and then the Bucks' size just in the paint, kind of just deterring that. And then also OKC's one of those teams that they get those extra possessions by turning you over and turning those into points. But I thought the Bucks did a good job of being more careful with the ball last night, so they kind of limited them there, and they also won the rebounding battle. So it was slim pickings in terms of the areas where the Thunder were going to be able to make up for the lack of 3-point shooting. And so it's going to be left to be seen how they do that moving forward, if they can add in a tweak here, a tweak there, to just help them have multiple options to win a game. It's just like you said, the Celtics, while everybody, loves the Celtics 3-point prowess, they still have the athletes that can get to the cup. Brown, Tatum, White is going to attack you there. And then on top of that, the Celtics defense is elite.
And CP, the Celtics will play fast. They'll play with pace.
Fast.
So good, because the other thing when you talk about easy baskets is getting out in transition, right? Getting layups, dunks out in transition. And I thought the Bucks did a super job of slowing them down. The other thing that you brought up with OKC that's interesting is they lost the rebounding battle. That was a huge problem last year. I killed them in that Dallas series. They could rebound. They were the smaller team. Hartenstein was supposed to solve that problem.
Right.
The problem is he can't solve it alone. This was designed to have Hartenstein and Holmgren here. So you do wonder, depending upon Holmgren's injury status, does Presti look to go add a big? A guy that's interesting, I will say, if I'm Sam Presti, if you don't want to go make a big splash, if you don't want to bring in a Jimmy Butler, and I'm not sure that I would, I don't know
Hmm.
how well that would fit this team.
Yeah.
Vucevic is an interesting guy. So's Jonas Valanciunas on Washington.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
going to get dealt. He
Yeah.
said
Yeah.
that
He's out of
contract
there.
was signed to be dealt. And the thing is, the reason I like it there is because it's 10 million a year.
Hmm.
Keep in mind the tradable contracts here for the OKC Thunder, because you gotta send contracts out to get.
Hmm.
Well, obviously it's not going to be Shea. Jalen Williams is doing extension. Dort, if you're getting a big time player, you can look to put his 18 million a year in a deal, but he's an essential piece to what they do. Obviously, you just brought Hartenstein in, you're not going to trade him.
No.
You come down to your bench guys, Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, right?
Hmm.
And come January 15th, those guys are eligible to be dealt. Those guys are both in that $8 to $10 million range, and they're both signed out for 3 to 4 years. And they're really good role players. Those are good prices for those players. If you wanted to go get a guy like Valanciunas, it may only cost you one of those dudes and
Yeah.
picks. And if that's the case, well, that's a no-brainer because you get bigger. And Valanciunas coming off the bench at 20 minutes a game, and you can start Holmgren and Hartenstein and have a
Yeah.
big to come off the bench. When it comes to my other perimeter guys, Dort and Jalen Williams, and I thought Casey Wallace had some good
He
moments
did.
in the
He
second
did.
quarter of that game and played well. I kind of think they're deep enough on the perimeter, especially with Caruso, that maybe the move is to just say, you know what, we don't want to get out rebounded at all, no matter what happens, and go add themselves another physical big. Valanciunas is going to be a very, very sought after guy come the trade deadline.
Yeah.
The other thing is I talked about Milwaukee and Lopez being available.
Hmm.
Man, well, Lopez would fit pretty damn well
Perfect.
in
Yeah.
OKC
Yeah.
as well. And then you can piece those two contracts together, Wiggins and Joe, to be able to bring in Lopez, pick or two, and that's a done deal. So there's some interesting stuff out there. And what Wiggins and Joe would do for Milwaukee is Joe's a shooter, Wiggins is a wing that defends.
Hmm.
You end up with more wings. It's an interesting combination of deal. And by the way, just for your listeners and viewers, that is not intel.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is me speculating
Yeah.
off the top of my head. I didn't hear that. I made that up.
Sure.
Okay, this doesn't mean it wouldn't work, but I made it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. No question about it. Where are you on the MVP ladder? Has Giannis moved up on your ladder? Is he the same? I mean, because he looks like the best almost he's ever been right now, the way
So-
that he's dominating the game. Has Jokic run
So
away with it, or are you putting Giannis up there?
I'm how about neither. So okay, I had the privilege earlier this week of being able to participate in Tim Bontemps' when he does 4 straw polls a year of the MVP, or 3 a year till the MVP, and reveals them on the Hoop Collective. So I will tell my votes were: I had Shea Gilgeous-Alexander as the MVP. And keep in mind, we recency bias can always nail you a little bit, CP. The NBA Cup championship game that we watched in Vegas on Tuesday night does not count in the
Doesn't count.
standings.
Yeah.
It is not an NBA game. So I'm not gonna look at that and downgrade Shea because he went 8 of 24 and upgrade Giannis.
It's fair.
Listen, Giannis was a big part of 2 and 8, right? Let's be fair about it. I love Giannis. He's had an unbelievable year. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's team's 20 and 5. All right, they're beating everybody, and he's having a super year. I just feel like where he's led this team record wise, it demands our attention in the MVP race. So I had Shea first, I had Giannis second, and I had Jokic third. And the thing I felt funniest about was not Shea first, was Jokic third.
Yeah.
I just couldn't put him up ahead of Giannis based upon what Giannis has done and how he's lifted that team. Fourth, I had Jason Tatum, who I think as time goes on, he went from being overrated in this league, and now he's criminally
He's right up there.
underrated for how good he is. He is so good. And you're going to love my fifth guy.
Oh,
My
yeah.
fifth
I
guy
was
that
waiting
I
for
gave
it.
him, you ready for it?
Yeah.
Carl Anthony
There
Towns.
we go. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because I will say this to your Knicks fan listeners, CP, and I know you got plenty of them. I shudder to think where the New York Knicks would be right now. They're 16 and 10 right now. I shudder to think of where they would be right now without Carl Anthony Towns. He has been unbelievable, better than advertised, better than they could have ever asked for, an absolute monster. And in a team where there's a whole lot not going right, Cat has masked a whole lot of that with just exceptional play. Night in and night out. I mean, he gets every rebound. Dude gets every rebound.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable how good he is in the defensive glass. And you can forgive some of the rim protection issues that he has sometimes based upon the fact that if he's on the floor and in the paint, no one else gets a rebound.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. And we're going to get to Towns in the next segment. But before we wrap up on this NBA Cup, overall sentiment on the second year of the tournament, Gals, because you and I both in this industry, a lot of what we do is take in fans' opinions, hear what fans are saying. What are the people saying about this? I can tell you, man, like I'm talking about this on Twitter. My replies, I don't care. I'm at Trader Joe's. I'm talking to the cashier, big Knicks fan. Oh, I'm not into that, man. NBA Cup's boring. Second year in, what'd you think, man?
First of all, people complaining about the NBA Cup in December and the NBA. Okay, what do they do for fun? Do they like basketball? Because it's fun. Like, I'm tired, right?
Yeah.
Like I had a good time at the NBA Cup. Like,
Yeah.
listen, I was totally against point differential. I flipped the script on that. You know what? Makes some of those games more exciting and more fun. Starters not coming out late in blowouts. I actually like the whole point differential thing. I didn't like it at first. Now I like it a lot. I would say this. I'd make two tweaks to the NBA Cup. One is I might expand the pool play from 4 games to 8 games so everybody gets a home and home. The other factor in that is that if you have everybody gets home games against both teams, against every team in their group, it also keeps teams in it deeper. You lose your first 2 NBA Cup games, you're out.
You're done.
So you kind of, so some teams don't care at that point.
Yeah.
So it keeps, if you make it where it's 8 games of group play before the knockout round, I think that may keep some teams in it for a little bit longer. And I think that would make the quality of play a little bit better. The second thing, and I feel really strongly about this, could you recite to me, CP, no one follows the league as well as you or I do. Could you recite to me right now who's in every group?
No.
Out of the 6 groups?
No. I can only tell you the Knicks because obviously I was tapped in with them and some of the teams were kind of same as last year.
Right. But so here's my point about the groups. In the NBA, they don't use the divisions for anything but schedule. Why not just make the divisions the groups?
Yeah.
And so if there's a weak division one year and a strong division one year, well, that's the luck of the draw. That's part of the appeal of an in-season tournament in the NBA Cup is you get a lucky draw and all of a sudden look what happens and look where you are. Okay, the stakes aren't so high that you need to worry about that, but it would make the divisions matter a little bit more again.
That's fair.
And I think so. To me, and we could tell you who's in every division, like we know that.
Right.
Like it would. I just think fans would get to identify a little bit more because the other thing it would do is we really don't have like division rivalry games. Almost don't exist in the NBA all that much. Can you create a little bit more of that? Like listen, a Knicks Nets NBA Cup game would be cool. Like that's fun. To have that in New York. To have so you get teams competing on that level. Philly Boston NBA Cup games. That's fun. So I kind of feel you can stoke some old rivalries in the NBA Cup by making the groups just go to divisions. To me, it's simple and it's something that people can count on every year. They know who's going to be in what group.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I liked it this year. I felt like it was competitive. You had guys play. I mean, fans, they complain that the players don't play hard. The All-Star game, they don't play hard. They don't play hard. Load management, this and third. I saw games, you saw the players were playing hard. It seems like the referees were on a playoff type of tempo in terms of how they were calling things. Last night's game was quite physical as well. I liked how you had the Knicks and the Hawks, 2 rivals, if you will, going head to head, and the Hawks, eliminating the Knicks on the Garden floor. I was there. That was kind of disappointing. I did like that. So it's interesting to hear on one end that fans complain that the players aren't playing hard, and then at the end of the day not be interested in this. But I do agree with you on those tweaks. I do like extending it to 8 games. I also think you need more crowd juice in it. Like maybe even making the semifinal matchup and in one of the leading team's arena, rather than just on a neutral site. I mean, it almost seems like they're playing like Mexico City when you hear the game. Then they darken the crowd to hide that there's nobody in there. That there's no juice in there. Like last night, there's no juice in the crowd.
It's interesting. They made Vegas the home of this, and maybe because Vegas has Summer League, maybe that's not the best choice.
Yeah.
I will say this. I think doing the semis on home courts may create some logistical issues. They want to do both semis in one day and have it be kind of event driven.
Yeah.
But maybe the experiment is NBA arenas, right? Maybe it's like how the Super Bowl rotates.
Oh, yeah.
And if you play, so we're going to do it this year in New York. And If the Knicks get there, well, great. That becomes a Knicks home game if you get there, And
Yeah.
so maybe changing the venues a little bit and making it be NBA cities will give it a little bit more juice. Like that could be.
Yeah.
Because listen, not that there's fatigue for the NBA in Vegas. There isn't. They don't have a team. But, Summer League is the biggest event
It's
of the
incredible.
NBA year.
Incredible.
It's an unbelievable event. It's a convention of anybody, whether you play in the NBA, coach, executive, owner, you cover the NBA in the media. Everybody's there at some point. And that's the kind of place it is. And it's one of those things where there's a ton of excitement there because people generally don't have a ton to do besides watch games.
Right.
And there's just a lot of fun. Everybody's hanging out, which makes it great in the summer league. This is a little more business-like in Vegas. Maybe Vegas isn't the best venue for it. And I think that may be something they have to take a look at when they decide what they're going to do.
Yeah, because I was at Summer League, the Zion debut, the Wemby debut. Like, you felt that energy the whole weekend in the building. You were looking at your schedule, one of these guys playing. I mean, they had to build a whole media wing for Wemby when he made his debut in that back corridor there at the Thomas and Mack Center. I was
there.
Big. You were there.
I remember it.
Right.
I was there.
So
it was crazy.
Yeah, and then another thing, they got to give the home team, the team fans enough time to travel. Like,
right.
If you're going to do a Saturday to Tuesday, outside of like the diehard Laker fan who can just drive over from LA, how many people are going to be able to say, okay, I'm going to take time off. You got the holidays coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm going to fly out to Vegas to go see my team. It was absolutely dead in there. If you look at, because of the way they're trying to emulate the way that they do it in soccer, for example, the FA Cup, it's 3 weeks between the semifinals and the finals. So this is another idea I saw on Twitter. Somebody was saying, hey, why not make the final game on the Christmas Day tilt? The 8 o'clock game on Christmas Day.
I'll give you one even better. How about expanding group play, playing group play till the week before Christmas, till essentially this week, and then having the semifinals and the final being MLK Day weekend, Thursday and Saturday, to kind of launch pad and springboard you into every team playing on MLK Day.
Right.
You don't have to change MLK Day one bit.
Right.
Do it on Thursday and Saturday of that week. People have vacation. They'll be able to go off. And because you're wrapping it up the third week of December, if you want to do what you're saying and actually have home games for these teams, you have the ability to logistically create to be able to do that, to be able to have teams get ready, make your schedule changes, be able to have the league prepare. You give yourself some time.
Yeah.
They're certainly able to do that when things come up in the playoffs very quickly and make sure that all those logistics are in place. So I actually because I like the idea of MLK Day and that weekend being when you wrap up the in-season tournament.
Yeah. And I think who has it next year on the new TV deals? Is it Netflix or Amazon that has the NBA Cup next year? I think it might be Netflix. Or maybe they share both.
Well, no, I don't.
Both share.
Does Netflix have a piece of the NBA package?
Or it's probably Amazon.
I don't know. I think it's Amazon.
It's
Amazon or NBC, but I think Amazon has the NBA Cup next year.
I don't think there's any chance they keep the format the same going into the new TV deal. They're gonna do something to tweak it.
Well, one thing I will tell you. Okay, we're hearing all this stuff about ratings being down.
Right.
Now, listen, it's the ratings being down thing has as much to do with the cable cord cutters as it has to do with anything else, because more and more games are being streamed and more stuff is being consumed in short snippets via social media.
Sure.
The league's as popular as ever. So let's not get crazy with the ratings being down. With all that said, with the amount of money that ESPN and Amazon and NBC have poured into the NBA, you can bet that if these TV partners are all in agreement on a format change, even if 2 of the 3 of them are in agreement on a format change, that format's going to change. They're going to have a whole lot more power, the TV networks, over what happens in this league than they've ever had, especially if they're struggling a little bit with ratings and with being able to jack up ad rates so they're able to get their money back in paying what they paid for the live sports.
That's right. They're definitely going to revisit that, man. So interesting to see how things are shifting in the league. CP the franchise, Brian Gelsiler in the building. Salute to everybody in the chat. Hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. NBA Weekly on the ones and twos. Okay, reunion time in Minnesota. The Knicks and the Timberwolves, the two teams making a blockbuster trade prior to training camp. Both teams trying to find their footing. Seems like Minnesota's winning a couple of games here and there. Knicks trying to figure it out. You mentioned Towns, but where do you see things for these two teams right now?
Let's start with Minnesota because they're starting to pull this thing together and
Yeah.
starting to play defense in the way that they're capable of playing
Hmm.
defense. CP, I'm going to say this, and I don't mean to besmirch the man because I think he's a heck of an NBA player.
Hmm.
Julius Randle ain't easy to play with. And he comes into your
That I know.
team
That I know.
couple weeks before training camp, doing things his way, with his feelings a whole bit hurt
True.
because the Knicks had made him part of their little Villanova mafia, and we love you,
True.
Julius. And oh, by the way, we'll see you, buddy. So you have that part of it that rubs him the wrong way. Listen, Dante DiVincenzo was a great Knick last year, had a super year.
Yeah.
Not having a super year for the Timberwolves
At
this
all.
year. And by the way, his feelings being hurt, I understand more than Randall's because they made a whole big deal over this Villanova Mafia and we're bringing the guys together. I think Rob Perez at NBA Radio calls it La Cosa Nova, which I love. Okay.
Shout out to Rob.
That we're bringing all these dudes together, right? And with bringing them together, what happens next after this? They don't ever play a game together.
Mhm.
And DiVincenzo's gone. I mean, these guys have to feel absolutely like, and it's a weird thing. And I almost feel like, because, you've heard a lot of stuff about Bridges.
Mhm.
We've seen an awful lot of bad body language, CP, like a lot of bad body language with
Mhm.
Bridges. And you do start to wonder if maybe some of this stuff didn't creep into Bridges a little bit with him saying, well, geez, if they're going to go ahead and move Dante, they'd move me. Like, almost no one feels secure. Bridges doesn't have a contract.
Mhm.
Everybody else does. And I think that matters in all of this too. So, like, you look at that with the Knicks, and that kind of is a fly in the ointment. But getting back to the Timberwolves, they've started to guard much better lately. And I think Randall's understood this is Anthony Edwards' team.
Yeah,
Just, it's his world, and everybody else is living in it. So you just got to kind of, fit in there. And he started to lately. They're starting to play much better and much better defense, and they're slowing things down. They just need to shoot it better from three. They counted on being a much better 3-point shooting team than they've been. I'm just going to swing my hand and get this light back on. There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Tap into the sensor.
But it happens once in a while.
Mhm.
But so, yeah, that's kind of how I look at the Timberwolves. And for the Knicks, we know we got a depth issue. Tom's running these starters a lot of minutes. Something at some point's going to have to solve it. I know that people are waiting for the cavalry to come with Mitchell Robinson. I don't think it's coming very quickly, if at all. I will say this to you, CP, to your Knicks fans out there. Mitchell Robinson, I think, is more likely to be traded with picks and or assets to bring in a bench piece at the trade deadline, more likely than he is to actually come back and play for the Knicks this year.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. They're in desperate need of experience and depth because right now they don't have either. And waiting on Mitch, I think it's foolhardy. And the timeline keeps getting extended and extended. It keeps getting pushed. But he is one of their most tradable assets right now. This is based on his contract, and who knows? Maybe a team may see some potential there if he can get healthy. But they need help. I like how the offense is structured. The offense, they can walk into 130 points a night. No problem.
Great offense.
It's a great offense.
Great offense.
It's a great offense.
It really is.
But one of the issue is it's not necessarily on the cat side with the rim protection. It's that Bridges, especially his ability to guard at the point of attack, because he's the guy that's quote unquote covering for Brunson's defensive deficiencies, and he's inconsistent. Sometimes he's all right. He's kind of settled in a little bit, but if he's getting burnt at the point of attack, and then everything else is crumbling around him, their 3-point defense is left susceptible, and then their rim protection is left susceptible. So now you not only have Brunson and Towns as your weaker defenders, now you have Bridges as a question mark.
Yep, I totally agree. And listen, you're right. Brunson, he's the guy who was charged to come in and cover for Brunson. And if he's not guarding great on the perimeter, you're in a whole lot of trouble. Listen, Shaq has an old expression. If you want the dog to guard the house, you got to feed him. All right? Bridges got traded to the Knicks with the understanding that at worst, I'm going to be a number 3 option behind Brunson and Randall. Right? I can have the ball in my hands a good amount, but I'll be number 3 option behind Brunson and Randall. 2 things have happened here that Bridges didn't count on. Number 1, Karl Towns comes in, and let's face it, as much as we want to talk that Brunson's a number 1 option, he's been a number 1 option. Karl Towns is the number 1 scoring option in this team right now. I don't think there's any 2 ways about it. Brunson's gone to number 2. Number 3 is OG Anunoby. who up till recently is having the best year of his career.
Yeah.
He's kind of reverted to the mean a little bit. But Anunoby has showed you pieces of his offensive game, specifically his ability to attack closeouts. And when you shoot from three like he does, over 40%, and they're coming at you with closeouts to try to get a hand in your face, and you can put it on the floor and go to the basket, you are now a major scoring threat. He has
Mhm.
become an offensive creator for them. Bridges has fallen to the fourth offensive option. And Josh Hart's not a I don't shoot guy. He's going to
Yeah.
take open shots. He's going to go to the basket. Bridges is struggling for touches.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
having trouble finding rhythm. And that's spilling over into how he plays on defense. Bridges, I said it earlier, his body language is bad out there.
Mhm.
And the thing is this, some coaches would hold his hand through this. Tom doesn't hold anybody's hands. And I don't blame him. It's a grown man league. You know what? This is the situation you're in. We traded 5 first-round picks for you. Okay. At that point in time, and we're going to give you a contract extension. When we're ready to give you a contract extension. Yeah, come here, play your hardest for us. You were supposed to be here with your buddies. You're supposed to be thrilled to be here. But now this has become about, hey, I'm not going to be thrilled with my role. And again, I come back to the same point I made earlier. Brunson got paid, took less, but got paid.
Mhm.
Towns has got a huge, huge contract. OG Anunoby this past offseason made a whole lot of money. And the reports that are out there, by the way, about OG Anunoby raising his price tag after he heard about the Bridges trade on ESPN,
Mm.
which is a true story from what I understand.
Mm.
Okay. It raised Anunoby's price, but Anunoby got paid. Josh Hart, okay, summer before last, got a contract extension.
Yeah.
He's gotten paid. Bridges is the one who has not gotten paid yet. He's the one that's been asked to take a back seat. There's a lot going on with him that isn't great. Tom's trying to figure it out. They had a blowout game. I forget who was against a week and a half ago where Bridges ended up playing a ton of minutes, 46 minutes, had like 34 points. Tom kept him on the floor to get a lot of shots. I think that's a Band-Aid on the situation. But Bridges, to your point, and you said it, and you're 100% right. That's the guy to watch with the Knicks right now. If Bridges doesn't turn the attitude around, you worry about them right now. Listen, Boston, we know is great.
Yeah.
Cleveland, right now, they look like a better team than the Knicks. Let's be frank about it.
They do.
Okay.
Real.
Milwaukee just won the NBA Cup. When Orlando gets Banchero and Wagner back, Orlando's going to be real tough.
They'll be right there.
The Knicks got work to do, man.
Yeah.
They have to find places internally to get better. And yes, it'd be nice to see somebody emerge off that bench, Hakordi, Kolek, Dadier, one of these draft picks to be able to show you what they can do. They just got to chew it back. He'll help out. Certainly, Campaign's been an okay piece for them. But they're going to need some internal improvement. And part of that internal improvement comes in the starting five. The guy they need to see it from, A, is Bridges on both ends of the floor. B, I just think we need to see better offensive performance and a more efficient job from Jalen Brunson. I think what's happened to Jalen Brunson this year, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it. Brunson, the last couple of years, especially last year, was a good, bad shot maker, CP. Like he really was.
Yeah.
He's not making the bad shots this year. And I think he's got to narrow his shot selection a little bit and adjust his game a little bit for the fact that those shots aren't falling like they were.
Yeah, that's certainly fair. On the Minnesota side, they're up to 6 in the West right now. As you said, their defense is stabilizing. Offensively, sure, you can get excellent individual isolation performances from Edwards, obviously from Randall, but from an overall team perspective, what do you think about their offense in terms of how they can compete in the West against an OKC, or can they match the firepower of these other teams in the West? I still think they're in need of a point guard, but what do you think offensively this team's ceiling is?
Well, Dillingham's not an answer. Let's start
right.
with that right now. He's not, and they thought DiVincenzo could be an answer there.
Yeah,
he hasn't been an answer. Okay, they thought he could be. He has not been an answer there. Here's my thing with Minnesota offensively. They're easy to stop. And when you look, think about this. Oklahoma City, number 1 ranked defensive efficiency in the league. Houston's number 2. Okay, I look at Dallas defensively with what PJ Washington did last year with the addition. I mean, we talk about a former Knick. How good's Quentin Grimes been, CP? He's been phenomenal for them. Najee Marshall's been excellent. Dallas is tough. I don't see Minnesota scoring enough to beat Dallas, Oklahoma City, or even Houston in a playoff series. Okay, Houston is tough defensively, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, Amen Thompson is a heck of a good young player. They roll defensive guys at you that are really, really tough, and they have a poor defensive center in Şengün. They cover for him great. They do a super job of that. I think Minnesota, it's too Edwards centric. And there's too much isolation ball because if it's not Edwards playing isolation, it's Randall playing isolation. And I don't know that they're a good enough 3-point shooting team when teams start to load up on that ISO offense against both of those. Listen, Anthony Edwards is a great young player, not a good young player, a great young player. He's not Jordan. He ain't wearing a cape. He's not Superman. As a matter of fact, not even Jason Tatum. Like and so when Jason Tatum, by the way, has Jaylen Brown next to him. When you load up on him, his life's going to be tougher because there's an immaturity to his offensive game, CP,
Yes.
in how frequently he settles for threes and how frequently he takes a lot of long twos off the dribble. I think that part of his game has to mature a little bit. He needs to become a little bit more of a spreadsheet guy, catch and shoot threes and taking the ball into the paint a heck of a lot more often because that's him at his best.
Is Jaden McDaniels almost in that Mikal Bridges role where it's like, man, if he's not eating, he's got to be more of an inconsistent player? Because he seems like a guy like, everybody wants to see him be that dominant defender, that dominant wing, and he can be, but he's another guy you haven't really seen that consistency from.
Problem with him. Listen, I think if Bridges is getting regular touches on the Knicks, I think you'll eventually get efficient play out of him. I know there's been struggles with the shot. He'll get there. Okay. I'm not terribly panicked about that because the body of work would show us previously that he'll get there, right? When you look at McDaniels, it's a catch-22 for the Timberwolves because more usage is going to lead to inefficiency. He's not an efficient offensive player. And yes, he'll catch and shoot situations. He'll have his moments where he can knock shots down. He certainly can. But he's not OG Anunoby. I don't know how happy I am with the ball running through him to have to be the one that attacks closeouts all the time. And if that's affecting how he defends, that's a major factor for them. What's interesting about them is I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker's been terrific off the bench for them. And I do think that, when you talk about his skill set, his ability to handle, his ability to shoot, his ability to guard, I do think there are some looks where their best five, whether it's replacing McDaniels at another wing spot, whether it's replacing Conley at the point guard spot and playing there and going a little bit extra long, I think Alexander Walker's a guy that's got to have a role there. And listen, they've moved him ahead of DiVincenzo in the rotation, and rightfully so. But I think the more you see Nickeil Alexander Walker from Minnesota, the better off they're going to be on the offensive end of the floor.
Excellent two-way player, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, man. He's had a tremendous past couple of years for sure. Going to be interesting to see how these two teams match up, man. In particular, I'm looking at a Randall and an Obi matchup here. I'm looking at Edwards, and you're going to either see Hart or Mikal Bridges trying to slow Edwards down. How do you see these things match it up tomorrow night?
I'd put Hart on Edwards, and I would understand that I could always go to Anunoby or Bridges if I had to. I would, listen, you have to hide guys a little bit. I'd put Brunson on the point guard.
Yeah, Conley.
Conley. I'd probably have Bridges on McDaniels, but what I think I do is I don't know that I would have Anunoby necessarily guarding. I mean, I guess I probably would have Anunoby guard Randall.
Yeah.
But you also can hide somebody on Rudy Gobert if you want to do that.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to have Towns match up on Gobert. And maybe it's Towns on Randall. And now you say, okay, that pulls Towns away from the basket.
Yeah.
Fine,
and also puts him
Randall
in potential foul trouble because Julius is going to be a bull in the china shop tomorrow night. He's going to be looking to destroy them.
He is. And to your point, Towns' biggest issue on the court is foul trouble.
Right.
It's his biggest problem. And the Knicks without Towns have a little bit of trouble there. So, maybe you do hide Towns on Gobert and you do it that way. What's going to be interesting, they're going to go at Towns and try to get him in foul trouble. What's interesting is how they're going to guard Towns. Because they'll probably put Rudy on him, but I actually think you're going to see more Naz Reid on him than you see Rudy. I think they're going to play Naz Reid more because I think Naz Reid will be able to muscle him in a way that Rudy can't. He'll start to back Rudy down. Rudy, listen, guy's been a 3-time defensive player of the year, right?
Yeah.
That's mostly as a help defender. That's mostly through block shots, switching onto guards on the perimeter and that kind of stuff. That stuff doesn't come against banging with other big 7-footers. As a matter of fact, Minnesota beat Denver in a second-round series last year. The two primary Nikola Jokic defenders, and they were as effective as anybody can be on Jokic, were Karl-Anthony Towns and Naz Reid in that order, not Rudy Gobert. So I actually think you'll see more Reid on Towns in that matchup, and I think you'll see Reid potentially play more than Gobert in Thursday night's game.
Going to be a blockbuster, no doubt. These teams meeting tomorrow, and then they're going to meet again at the Garden. I think it's January 17th. They meet again at the Garden, so that's going to be interesting. Randall already playing it up today. He spoke to Stephen Bondi of the New York Post saying this is just another game. He's not. He doesn't care about this game. All right, Julius, we'll see. But I'm telling you, man, he's going to
pull this leg and it plays Jingle Bells.
I'm telling you,
know what
man.
I mean?
I'm telling you, he's going to be in straight up attack bully ball mode tomorrow night. So, going to be interesting to see how the Knicks try to contain him. Keeping it in the West, CP the franchise, Brian Gelsiler on the ones and twos. Salute to everybody in the chat. Hit that like button, share button, and subscribe to the channel. Keeping it on the West, Gels, the Denver Nuggets. Another team who, as you know, the league has their target on in terms of what are they going to do to improve this team. This Denver Nuggets team kind of, treading in fifth in the West, 14-10. But with Jamal Murray's inconsistencies and sometimes ineffectiveness, it's amazing that Joker being able to potentially average a triple-double this season. It's incredible, but you almost have to question, is it enough? Is it sustainable? So now you're hearing the Nuggets are looking for help. Zach Lavine, the latest name attached to Denver, man. Your thoughts on that?
Listen, I don't love anything Denver's going to do to weaken defense. And Denver made a big mistake. Management did and ownership did in not trading Michael Porter when he had all the trade value. Because if I was Denver, if I'm going to go into the luxury tax, what I would have done, and I would have done it this past off season, is I would have tried to keep Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and then I would have tried to trade Michael Porter to the Nets for Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith. See if I can collect a pick or two there. If I can't find, and that would have just made my team deeper, better, okay, and the right complementary pieces around Jokic, Murray, and Gordon. That would have been perfect. Well, they didn't do that. They decided to let KCP go. Listen, Christian Brown's played well for the most part, but they're getting nothing from their bench. I mean, if they didn't sign Russell Westbrook, where the hell would they be? The dude's been excellent for them, right? Westbrook's been terrific for them. I mean, Strother's inconsistent. Peyton Watson's inconsistent. They just haven't. Calvin Booth hasn't drafted as well as he intended to. And with the way they built this team, he needed to draft better. Now, they're worried about Jokic carrying too much load. It's a legitimate worry. And Zach Lavine's played really well this year. He's had his best shooting season from the perimeter. He's owed a ton of money. I understand the thought in getting him, but you have to trade a big contract to get him. Jamal Murray, he just signed an extension. He's poison pilled this year. You're not going to be able to move him. So you have to move Michael Porter. So you're going to move Michael Porter, and your main piece you're going to bring in is Zach Lavine? What's that going to do to your defense? Right. Listen, Porter can be a main star for a team. Now, a main star in a team that wants to win a championship? Probably not. He's probably more of a second or third guy on a team that wins a championship. There's already been a third guy on a team that won a championship. The problem is this. He defends well for them. He rebounds really well for them. You're going to give up those parts to help Jokic on offense. You're going to be a team that's just got to outscore people because you will stop no one. Jamal Murray can't guard anyone anymore. No. You're asking an awful lot of Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown in that scenario, keeping in mind that Jokic has his defensive deficiencies as well. So I just think they got to be really careful here in what they do and how they do this with Michael Porter. You want to move Michael Porter, I'm okay with that. You better bring in a real good two-way guy that's going to be able to do what you need him to do. Or bring in a couple of guys that stretch your roster who can knock out threes and complement Jokic more. I think that's got to be the way to go. To me, I don't see it making a lot of sense. Certainly not in a two-team deal that they're going to send Michael Porter out to bring in Zach Lavine. They need a heck of a lot more than Zach Lavine to come in there to be able to do that, because ultimately Denver's biggest problem here, they need to lengthen the roster with two-way players. They need to lengthen the rotation, and they just don't have enough good two-way players. So what are we going to do? We're going to take probably your best two-way wing, and we're going to send him away for a guy that maybe is a better offensive player than Porter, but nowhere close to as good a defensive player. I mean, obviously something else would come back there, but it would have to be a lower contract. And if I'm Chicago, I mean, who do you want there? Well, who has a smaller contract? Kobe White's on not a huge extension, but if I'm Chicago, I'm not trading Kobe White. Like the guys I want to trade are Lavine and Vucevic. Like those are the guys, maybe Alonzo Ball you get, but even Alonzo Ball, that's $17 million. Yeah. Like there's not the cheap guys to get there. It's tough to find the fit for a deal without third teams involved. And again, getting cents on the dollar trade value wise for Michael Porter to me doesn't seem like an answer.
I don't know Kroenke's patience level where he is with things. Obviously, the navigating the salary cap and staying under that second apron has been a priority over the last 2 years in terms of them seeing that two premier role players walk out of there and Bruce Brown and KCP. But this seems like it could be a potential career or tenure defining move here by Calvin Booth. He's got to tread lightly here because, as you said, he hasn't drafted well. You let these two guys go now. And now you're talking about potentially parting with a guy in Porter who has been healthy, 26 years old, a great off-ball shooter, as you said, rebounding, defending well. But at the same time, you do need a little more offense. Because of Murray's ineffectiveness and inconsistency, you need someone who can put the ball in their hands and go to work to give Jokic some legitimate help. It's a very precarious situation, man.
It is. And listen, Jokic is not necessarily the kind of guy that would run to ask out. You don't want to weaken the team around him either. You don't want to take him for granted. And that's a thing that they have to be careful of because what happens is this. And listen, I'm going to pivot to Dallas as an example for a sec because Nico Harrison's done an awesome job there.
Yeah.
But early on, they were experiencing a huge asset drain, right? I mean, you look at what they gave up, Kristaps Porzingis, they got Spencer Dinwiddie. I forget and the second player was Davis Bertans.
Bertans, yeah.
Okay, right? I mean, and that was a nothing kind of deal. And then the Kyrie deal kind of changed all their fortunes, the tanking to get Lively, the Gafford deal, the PJ Washington deal, and they reloaded. Great, but you got to watch the asset drain, okay? Listen, 2 years ago, they didn't bring back Jeff Green. Was a mistake. They paid Zeke Naji. That's a problem. Zeke Naji, even at $9 million a year, he's a liability.
Yeah,
he's not playable for them, and they're paying him $9 million a year. So they made a mistake there. They should have brought Jeff Green back. You can't fault them on Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown was a similar situation contract-wise to Hartenstein and the Knicks. They was only able to match to a certain number on Bruce Brown. That was going to be it. Okay, Indiana ended up blowing that number out of the water, and now Brown's in Toronto. I mean, that's just, so you can't blame them there. But the KCP situation last year, they had an ample opportunity to be able to do that, and they decided not to do it. It's just they haven't been proactive enough. If you go and you trade Michael Porter right now, who, keep in mind, you lost KCP in the name of keeping Michael Porter. You're going to trade Michael Porter right now. You better be real careful who you get back for him, because if you end up not making a productive trade that helps this team and you continue to squander years in Jokic's prime, one thing I'll tell you about Nikola Jokic, okay? At one point, he's going to have enough of basketball, and he's going to want to leave basketball. Yeah. He's also a competitive SOB, CP, and he wants to win more than one championship. And they got to continue to put the right team around him, and they may have. And the one thing we haven't mentioned is they may have gotten caught holding the bag with Jamal Murray. He don't look like the same player, not even close.
Look like the same guy, man. Does not look like that, man. He was a killer in the finals.
Not moving great. Yes.
Absolute killer,
and the
man.
Thing is, like I mentioned earlier, Brunson, a good, bad shot maker. Murray's the same way.
That's
right.
Good,
bad shot maker.
That's right.
He's not a good, bad shot maker anymore.
Yeah.
He's not getting those shots off. He's struggling athletically. He just doesn't look like the same guy. So your point about treading lightly is a huge point.
Yeah.
This next deal, whatever Denver does next on a major level, is going to be really, really significant and say a lot over what happens to this team over the next 3 years.
Yeah. And then on top of Lavine, that another name, shout out to our guy Ian Begley of SNY TV, reported that Brandon Ingram is another name that has been tied there. I mean, the Pelicans don't want to pay him. Another underwhelming guy. What do you think about an Ingram match pairing with Jokic and the Nuggets?
I like it, but again, he doesn't bring what Porter brings.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. Like, listen, Ingram's a shot creator. He'll get his own shot. He's a really good player in the mid-range. And Brandon Ingram, there's a lot of teams that he could go and he could help right now. And Denver is certainly one of them. But again, you have to think of this at the expense of Michael Porter is where you run into a problem. Yeah. And that's what I worry about for them. They put a lot in having Porter with this team. They gave up a lot in the name of keeping Michael Porter. And I like Brandon Ingram a lot. And I do think there's a lot of places that he could go and make a major contribution. Like, listen, if the Lakers want to do something to get better this year, why not knock on that door? Why not go see what they could get Russell plus? right? Even I wouldn't mind. I'll tell you this, and I know they love Austin Reeves. I don't know that you're going to be able to win with Reeves and Connect in the same lineup.
No.
Okay. But if you could put something together where you're packaging Russell and Reeves to be able to bring back Brandon Ingram with a couple of small contracts, you got a chance. Okay. Because if you can keep Hachimura and bring in Brandon Ingram, I like that team. Another place where I think Brandon Ingram would be terrific. And there's salary wise, especially if this team would re-sign him to an extension, it would work out for the Pelicans. And that would be Detroit. Detroit looks good.
Yeah,
Put him next to Cade
do.
Cunningham.
Yeah.
And move Tobias Harris as the contract. He would be really good there.
Yeah.
I like him a lot there. Listen, I do think Ingram gets moved. I think Zion Williamson's gonna have to come back and play to get moved. But I do think for the Pelicans right now, the only choice is to, take a match to it. You want to keep Murphy, you want to keep Missy. But when it comes to guys like DeJounte Murray and Williamson and Ingram, it ain't working. Like, you got to go the other way. So I don't think we look up at the trade deadline. I don't think Brandon Ingram's going to be a member of the Pelicans.
Yeah, but it's still an intriguing name, both him and Lavine, just in terms of getting a second chance and playing kind of a secondary role to the lead dog. I think that can help elevate their careers and maybe ultimately a team. Maybe those guys finally are able to win when they play with a guy like Jokic. So gonna be left to be seen what happens there at the February trade deadline. Last question: where does Jimmy Butler end up getting traded? Is Riles gonna try and finally trade Jimmy Butler, man?
If the package is right. Now, listen, there's a lot of Butler to the Warriors talk. If I'm the Warriors, I'm not giving him Kuminga and Wiggins for Butler. I can't rely on Butler enough. And when you trade for Jimmy Butler, you have to see if Jimmy Butler can fit in your system. Do you have the right kind of guys around Jimmy Butler? I would think the most likely destination for Jimmy Butler is going to be Houston. I think that I do. I think that first of all, the Steven Adams contract can lead a package which allows them not to have to go crazy. So if they put Dylan Brooks and Steven Adams in a package, all of a sudden they now have enough good young players in the Easons and the Whitmores. And not that they're looking to move Reed Shepherd, but there's another really good young name there. And I think they can bring in Jimmy Butler here. And he would be the kind of guy that could help them advance deep into the playoffs. And more than that, be like a work ethic model for guys like Jabari Smith and Jalen Green.
Yeah.
And so to me, I look at the fit because Houston's in great salary condition. They're in great salary shape. So, if you can do that with Adams and Brooks and manage to bring Jimmy B in and think about their core, Şengün, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Freddie VanVleet, and Amen Thompson. If I can keep that core in place and have Jimmy Butler on my team, I love how I look. I love how I look. Because I'll tell you, some guy nobody ever talks about for Houston's had a really good year for them and has allowed them the option to be able to move Steven Adams' salary. Jack Landale. He's played good for them this year.
Yeah.
He's been as a backup center to Şengün.
I wanted him on the Knicks.
He would have been great on the Knicks.
Yeah.
He's fit really well to what they're trying to do there. So I think that's a really interesting guy for them as well. But I think when you look at the way it all shakes out with Butler, I think going to Houston and being able to lead those young guys in a Western Conference playoff run, I think it's a perfect fit for Butler, and I think it'd be a perfect fit for the Rockets.
Interesting indeed, man. And that Rocket team, I guess that's the next move, man. Udoka has them playing terrific basketball, excellent defense. Now the question is, who's the next vet to take them to that next step? They need one more.
Correct.
Who's the next one? But that's an unbelievable team. I love all the wings that they have on the team, from Amen Thompson. I was a Tari Eason guy from LSU. He just looked like a game wrecker from the draft. I'm like, this guy looks like he can wreck a game, and he's incredible. So, they've got a lot of potential there, man. Going to be left to be seen how they finish out the season going forward. But, Gels, man, appreciate the time. Great show. And let's do it again, man. This is a great conversation, man.
CP, it's always my pleasure, buddy. Let's do it again soon. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, sounds good, man. And everybody in the chat, thanks again for tuning in. This was another edition of the NBA Report NBA Weekly. Make sure to hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. And also remember that the show's available in audio podcast format. So if you miss it, we are available on all major podcast platforms. So that's it for us today, and we'll see you guys next week, man. Have a good one, everybody. Peace.